Hello baseball fans and welcome into another edition of the British Baseball Podcast. I'm your host Matthew and joining me on this episode is Great Britain baseball manager Liam Carroll. Before the show starts, I'd like to invite each and every one of you to subscribe to the show, and where you can, leave a little review, plus you can follow it on Twitter, Facebook and Instagram at BritBaseballPod. And the shows and bonus material are also available on YouTube at the British Baseball Podcast. As always, your support is greatly appreciated, so any feedback and suggestions can be sent over to britishbaseballpodcast@gmail.com. I love to hear from you and to share your stories too. So without further delay, it's time to chat. And joining me today on the British Baseball Podcast, I'm joined by Great Britain's very own national team manager, Liam Carroll. Good evening, Liam.
Good evening, Matt. Thanks so much for having me on. I'm really impressed with your podcast and can't wait to chat.
Thank you very much. And I'm really impressed with your work too. So happy days. You've done a lot of stuff in podcasting previously. You've done some really good interviews. For those that haven't had the pleasure of listening to stuff in the past, do you want to give us a quick introduction to yourself and how you got involved in baseball and what's led you up to the Great Britain national team?
For sure, and given that everyone's got a little bit more time, I'll not give you the shortest version. So, despite the accent being messed up, I am British. I'm originally from London. My father is an Irish American. He was born in Chicago but moved to New York when he was very young and grew up a fanatical Brooklyn Dodgers fan. Grew up watching Jackie Robinson in person, which is just amazing, and so that's where the baseball part of me comes from. My mother was a teacher. She's British from Bedfordshire, where I actually live now, and perhaps the coaching gene comes from her. So I lived in London until I was about 6. Mum was a teacher, and we moved around. So just as we'd found baseball in London with the Waltham Forest Angels, a club that doesn't exist anymore, that was actually in the shadow of the Olympic Stadium, we moved to Somerset, where there also wasn't much baseball, at least not where we lived, and Dad started a softball team at the local pub, and that morphed into a baseball team. So I got to play some baseball for the previous version of the Southwest League. Then we moved to Bristol, and through this time I actually started playing with Bracknell, who at that time were in the National Baseball League. That was my first taste of British Baseball Federation competition. I also started playing with the national teams in 1996. And then, following in the footsteps of many other British players, went to the US for college baseball, played for a few years, was not as good as most of the other guys that went over there, and started coaching and transitioned in 2004 from playing to coaching. And at that year, in fact, I got my first taste with the national teams, started coaching the U18 national team in 2004 as an assistant, and also started on the coaching staff at the University of Nevada, Las Vegas. So all in all, it stops in London, Somerset, Bristol, Cornwall, where my parents live now, 2 different cities in California, Las Vegas, back to London, back out to Las Vegas, back to London again, a couple of stops working for Baseball Softball UK in a couple of different roles. And the whole time since 1996, as I mentioned, some involvement in one way or another with the national team's program as a player, assistant, and head coach.
Wow, done a fair bit then. It seems that a lot of teams are born in pubs.
It's logical, right? So I imagine right now there might be a few less teams forming, but absolutely, I think the magic of pub, whether it's forming teams or the post-game conversation with your team and the other, is a magic element of not just baseball but sport in general.
Yeah. I wonder how long it'll be before see like the Toby Carvery sluggers appear somewhere.
Well, that's gonna be your team. I should perhaps start taking my cooking to Toby Carvery. I think we could help him take it up a notch.
Oh, spoiler alert for something that's coming later on with your cooking. For those that don't know, if you haven't seen Liam's LinkedIn post of the day, it looks like a beautiful shepherd's pie that was always a cottage pie.
That was actually just mash. I made my mash look spectacular. Imagine what a shepherd's pie would look like.
Well, if you'd feel me, should have said yes. It was the most epic shepherd's pie you'd ever seen. So going back to your management, what's been the most challenging part of being the England manager?
Ooh, that's a great question. I think the biggest thing, and this is true regardless of what level you coach at, and in some ways it might even be harder if you're coaching youth age groups, is cutting players. It's never fun. You have players that work so hard, players that are so invested, and it's not like you still have a season to play. We're talking about national teams existing in a very small niche. We play a few games a year and that's it. And our players will work so hard, and unfortunately, not everybody gets to play. There has to be there's always going to be cuts, and there has to be a certain level for it to be fair at the national teams level. It's not for everybody, and cutting players is never easy. I think the other thing I struggle with at the national teams level is there are so few games. Staying sharp can be quite difficult. But even that is nothing compared to the necessity that we have once a year, if not more, to break some hearts.
Yeah, very true. So have you got any advice, like parents or for youngsters that may have been cut? I can imagine, well, a friend of mine does a podcast based on grassroots football, and he's talked about kids that like on Manchester City's books or Manchester United's books, and they're from such a young age and they get cut and they feel like they fall out of love with the sport. With baseball not being as big a sport in the UK as we'd like it to be, how do you sort of keep the spirits up for the youths that have been let go, or the fact that it's a no-go?
It is really difficult, and I think you nailed it on the head by talking about baseball being a minority sport. And the reality for us, certainly at the youth age groups, is such a high percentage of youth players get to play at the national team level because there are so few players. The bar is lower than is ideal, and so it's often the case that the primary baseball experience and or a secondary group of friends are formed throughout national team experience. And if a player gets cut, they have however many times a year less opportunities to interact with their friends. And it's tragic that a player cut from the national teams would cause them to leave the sport entirely. But I think that has been the case, and it certainly shouldn't be the primary reason why we grow youth participation. But it's also a consideration because there are so many factors in why we need to grow youth participation. The advice I would give is and this can sound a little bit too romantic, but it is true, that the example of the player who's cut now but goes on to have a very successful career. Perhaps the ultimate example isn't a baseball one. People talk about Michael Jordan getting cut from his high school basketball team, and he went on to become the greatest basketball player ever. And we've had examples of that within our program. One name I can think of right now is Richard Klein, who's originally from Cartmel Valley, a program up in the Lake District that's produced numerous national team players. And Richard was cut early in his youth national team career, but has gone on to have an absolutely phenomenal career in the national teams program. Has been to 2 World Baseball Classics. Has been our second baseman at almost every tournament since about 2012. So it's a case of sticking to it and not giving up the dream. And it's not meant to be now. I think the other thing to mention there is we have this combination of factors for why we select players at the youth level. Part of it is about how much they can help the team win now, but a bigger part of it is how much they might be able to help us in the future, because ultimately performance really doesn't matter at the national team level until it's the adults. Of course, it's important at every age group when you're representing your country, but there might be players that aren't quite ready to do either of those things yet, where we know that they're going to be good one day, but they're just not ready for the demands of international competition at 12 or 15. And hopefully we can reinforce that message, and hopefully there are some fantastic, well, I know there are some fantastic club setups for them to go back to, and they're always going to be given a chance next year if they're cut from the national teams program.
Lovely. Have you ever had the chance to mentor somebody like on a one-to-one level, like in that sort of scenario? And I had a coach come up to me not last training session before last, and broke down my throwing technique because I looked like I was shot putting the ball. I was being the catcher in a drill when we're trying to hit the other end of the gym, and I was trying to adopt Will's one need approach, and I was just literally face planting and hurting my arm. So Roger kindly took me to one side, and for about an hour we literally broke down everything from like the wrist movement to elbow to shoulder, and then putting it all together. And just seeing all that come back together in another video was really, really good for me to see how I was doing it wrong. Have you ever had the chance to do anything like that?
Yeah, I think there's been lots of players that I've coached in an individual context. There's actually been players, adult players, youth players, baseball players, fast pitch players, and slow pitch players that I've been fortunate to coach in a one-to-one or small group setting, and it's an enjoyable challenge. You have to be on your game when there's just one of them. All of your attention is fantastic, but it also means I think the expectations are a little bit higher. But it's a fun challenge, and I've enjoyed it. I've also enjoyed and would like to do more of this, and think that it could potentially become something that the national teams could do more of in the future, is one-to-one coach mentoring. That's something that I enjoy, and there's been some coaches that I've worked with in BSUK's academy and high performance academy programs that have asked just for some input. It's never been anything formalized, but it's been a coach that wants some advice, wants to just have a chat, wants to talk about what they can do better, what they can do differently, what they do well, and I do find those enjoyable. And I found that even if you don't think the impact is substantial, there's been some coaches that have gone on to have a lot more confidence in their own ability to coach, and it shouldn't be a surprise because I've had those coaches that have mentored me through the years as well.
I was just going to ask that. Has there been anyone that you sort of looked up to, or still to this day? Is there anyone that you sort of call upon for advice or run ideas by?
Oh, so many. And I mean, you had Vince Garcia on the show recently, and certainly outside of my parents, the biggest impact on me, and I think other than the players, the older GB players who inspired me, the most inspiring coach and biggest impactor on my development, my choices to do things like go to the States, and quite frankly, my coaching style. There are so many that I still stay in touch with, and your fellow podcast host, Jeremy Sheetinger, being one that I just love to bounce ideas off, and has a personality that I think a lot of us are envious of, just with his level of confidence, and when it comes from someone who's been as successful as him in so many arenas, when someone like Sheets says you're a rock star, it really does help. And I think the more that we can have those conversations, the better.
Yeah, exactly. I'd love to have his voice as well.
Well,
I mean, it's got
start working
level.
on your accents.
I just have generic foreign accent, which I'm not going to do because it just sounds ridiculous. You mentioned the word inspire then a minute ago. The Team GB sort of motto or slogan is inspire, develop, and perform. Where did that come from? Is it a brainchild of yourself, or is it there before you started?
It is for me, and it's a product of conversations with lots of people, and having a lot of time to think. Well, not having a lot of time, but making a lot of time and investing a lot of time. It was born when I spent some time in the role of national teams program official on the BBF board. I'd been the head coach manager of the senior national team for a little bit, and there were no other volunteers for that role on the board. So even though there's a little bit of a conflict of interest that I was in charge of the program and managing the men's national team, I figured I would put my hand up. And one of the first things I wanted to do in that role is create a mission and vision for the entire program, top to bottom, from the under 12s that would be born just a year or two later, all the way up to the senior team. And the mission is inspire, develop, perform. and I think it's something powerful. It's something I would really love to see more of British baseball get behind. I think there's lots of pockets of British baseball all doing very, very good things, and all there's never any malice. There's just lots of people doing good things, but as I think everybody knows, there's not a single direction. There's not a single thing to rally behind, and I think Inspire, Develop, Perform could be it. And just to go into a little bit more detail about why I think this fits more than just the national teams program, the full mission is to inspire participation in and support of Great Britain baseball, to develop the best British baseball talent into world-class athletes and teams, and to perform on the international stage and create a winning tradition. And none of those things can happen unless British baseball as a whole is thriving. And certainly that's something we'd love to see. And I think inevitably, if more people are thriving domestically, the national teams will achieve new heights as well.
Indeed. What's sort of your typical day like as a national team manager, like days, week, month? How do you sort of what activities do you fill your days with?
Oh, it really depends on the time of year. I think first of all, even when it's incredibly busy, and even when there's the challenges that we spoke of earlier, like cutting players, it's an incredible privilege. It really does depend on the time of year. During the winter, I'm actually the busiest in terms of coaching, and it's from other hats that I wear, including coaching at the academy and high performance academy. In the season, I'm actually not that busy. I'll try and get out to as many games as I can at the weekends to scout players. And it's just a case of as things get closer to a tournament, the more it ramps up to where I'm very, very fortunate to have a very, very patient fiance. But it really does depend on the time of year, and it's a case of trying to find the time, make the time, given that it's a voluntary position, to make sure that I'm pulling my weight around the house in terms of bringing in some income as well.
So whereabouts has scouting taken you? Is it purely in the UK, or have you managed to travel overseas to see some of the British players that are abroad?
I've generally only been able to see players abroad when a trip has taken us there. The budget, as you might expect, is minimal. I wish we had a scouting budget. We don't. For overseas, we rely on a network of alumni and friends of the program who are very generous with their time, and if they see players, find players they know are British citizens, then they'll look out for us. It's so limited. I would love to be scouring the country up and down. I'd love to be in Scotland, Wales, Northern Ireland. It's just the budget isn't there, and if I'm going to games, it's on my own dime. So unfortunately, I can't get to as many games in as many places as I would like to.
So you're not booking any holidays or honeymoons based around certain places you want to see then?
Not if I want the wedding to last more than a day or two.
Brilliant. You posted a lovely photo online the other day on Twitter, and it's had the words "worth staying home for." I actually followed the link onto LinkedIn and read your story, and I've always really enjoyed reading it. Lovely piece of work. For those that didn't have the chance to read it, do you want to tell us a little bit more about the meaning behind it?
Yeah, you know what? I mean, I've been struggling with waiting versus doing, and I think it'll be easy for us all in this situation to wait. And I picked up a baseball and I wrote on it just to have a reminder, to go to when things are tough, worth the wait. The baseball itself, whether it's watching MLB, whether it's as a player, whether it's as a coach, is worth the wait. And then I took a moment and thought, actually, you know what? It's not. Another thing that has struck me recently is just we've spent so much time waiting for the World Baseball Classic qualifier that I'm just about sick of waiting. But just tying it to social distancing and whatnot, I changed what I wrote on the other side of the ball, worth staying home for, and certainly it is. And if that's the advice the smartest people in the world are giving us, then I certainly think we should follow it. And I also I enjoy writing. I think it's one of the few things I'm good at. Certainly in the genes. My dad is a writer by trade. My mother is a teacher, is a very good writer as well. It's something I've enjoyed doing. Something I probably should do more. And oftentimes I find it's the easiest way to express feelings. So I thought that the message of Worth Staying Home, whether it's specific to the baseball or anything else that we hold dear in our lives, is something that I should share in case anyone else finds comfort in it as well. And you mentioned the Phantom Shepherd's Pie. I referenced that I'm going to spend some of my time cooking, learning Spanish, hanging out with my dog, who's awesome. And I enjoyed writing my thoughts down, and I appreciate that you read it, and anyone else that's willing to spend a few minutes of their day reading it is incredibly appreciated, and I hope it helps them.
So you've got some more writing out there. Is there any that we can read some more of your material?
So yeah, I'll figure out a way to share the link. I've actually posted most of what I've written recently on my LinkedIn profile, which is where I posted this one. If you search for my name on LinkedIn, I'm sure you'll find it. If you check out my Twitter, which is at Liam Carroll GB, you'll find it there as well. So, and there's a few other things I've written, some things about coaching, some things about hitting, some things about baseball in general. I think I wrote something about facial expressions, which is something I find fascinating. Coaching players, the facial expressions you see are absolutely incredible. And sometimes it cracks me up. Sometimes it makes me wonder how they caught it with their eyes closed. So I wrote about facial expressions once. Going back a bit further, I used to write some blogs when I wrote for Baseball Softball UK, or when I worked for Baseball Softball UK. I put some blogs. So I think if you go to bsuk.com and click blogs, which is somewhere there, you'll find some of the things I wrote back a few years ago as well.
Great. So those of us that are craving the content of British baseball, something to read too. Back to the cooking. So, what's your signature dish?
Oh, good question. I mean, does breakfast count as a dish? Just a blanket answer. I love cooking breakfast.
Yeah.
I think it's one of the luxuries of working from home most of the time is having a little bit more time for breakfast. I have been influenced recently by Sam the Cooking Guy, and if you don't watch or subscribe to Sam the Cooking Guy on YouTube, highly recommend it. He's a funny guy. He's a Canadian living in San Diego, has over 1 million subscribers. He is not, he says, making a political statement here, but his mission is to make America cook again. And if you are a fan of Wendy's or Chipotle or my personal favorite, In-N-Out Burger, he will replicate their food. And I've taken lots of liberty stealing from him and tying it back around to breakfast, making hash browns and putting them as a layer in your breakfast sandwich. Highly, highly recommend it.
And that's the best thing about breakfast as well. You can have it for breakfast. You've even got like a middle bit for it. You got brunch. You can have it for your lunch. Or you can even have full English breakfast in like pubs as a tea. It's the most versatile food. It's the best.
It is the best. I love Brinner. It's my favorite meal of the day.
I love it. So what would your cooking show be called if you had one?
Oh, I think you're going to have to help me. Maybe that's something for your listeners to help out with, as long as they keep it PC. I would need some help, but I am seriously considering it. I think it would be terrible, but if it helps me occupy my time and gives people a laugh, let alone a recipe, I will consider throwing something on YouTube. But I have not had any inspiration for my name yet.
So we'll leave the cooking there for another time. I think we'll powwow afterwards and come up with some ideas for cooking shows. I forgot to congratulate you as well on the achievement of moving up the ranks with the national team. Like 7 places was quite a big jump. So fantastic, well done.
Thank you so much. Hopefully it continues in the future.
How far do you think we are from integrating like grassroots players in with the GB setup?
Well, I think, and this has to tie back to the improvement that we can make with regards to putting the word out about who's involved in the program. But like people ask, are there going to be any homegrown players on the national team? They are. They are every year. There's not been a national team that's consisted of players without any homegrown players. I think the number has fluctuated. Looking back to our most recent tournament, the European Championship last September, that we played in Germany, and just going through the roster, Connor Brown, homegrown product, Gary Davison, the same, Jamie Dix, the same, Richard Klein, I mentioned earlier, grew up in the Lake District, but actually moved to Germany, and just an incredible story himself of going out there. Richard moved to Germany and played in the same academy as did Max Kepler, the twins phenom. So bottom line, we are producing some players good enough to compete at the level, and the level of the European Championship is so good now. The challenge for us is to figure out a way that more players are going to reach that bar. There's lots of promise. If we look at our under 23s, who did so well, if you talk about the world rankings jump, largely in part to the success of the U23s last summer at the European Championship in the Czech Republic, skippered by Drew Spencer, did a fantastic job. We beat the Dutch for the first time in our program's history at any age group. So there's promise. There's players at the under 18, under 15 level, and under 12 level. Are they all going to reach that bar? No, they're not. Being realistic, but some of them will, and you hope that however long down the line we can flip the trend that we've seen pretty much since 1996 is when it began, of the number of overseas players outweighing the number of domestic players. We want that to tip back, and 1996 is interesting. And just not to digress too much, but in 1996 the European Championship B pool was hosted in Hull. I think when he was on with you, Kevin McAdam talked about hosting that tournament, and Great Britain won and the Czechs finished second. And if you look at the history of each program since then, it's night and day, with the Czechs, who are European power, almost exclusively homegrown players. Czech players are signing with professional clubs almost every year. There's a Czech player in the Orioles organization, Martin Savenka, who is very, very close to making the big leagues. Czech facilities are incredible. Whereas here we've leaned on overseas players more and more. We don't have incredible facilities. We're not producing players that are signing contracts with professional teams. So the Czechs, it has to be a model, not to copy, because I think that's a very dangerous game, but to just investigate. What did the Czechs do in 1996? What were they doing before 1996? What are they doing since, to come up with our own way so that we can produce better players, and not just for the national team. We just want to see British baseball better. I talked about it earlier. We want to see British baseball thrive, whether or not the national team's successful. We want to see it thrive. And if that happens, if there's more kids playing at better facilities with better coaching, then I think it's inevitable that we'll be able to send a national team away to a European Championship or even a World Baseball Classic and have a chance to win medals with homegrown players. I think that's possible, but it's going to start at the bottom, not the top.
Yeah, the Czech Republic are currently ranked 16th. Are there any teams that are around Great Britain in the rankings that you're surprised at, or do you think that, how can I word it? Are there some teams that are around that you think we can beat these and move up the rank? No, I'm doing a very bad job of describing this.
I get what you're saying, and it's a complex system. It's far from ideal, but I imagine that's true of any ranking system. There's always going to be winners and losers out of it. I think the first thing to say is you're only going to win rankings points in certain tournaments. It's not every time you go away. So when our under 18s went away to the European Championship qualifier last summer and beat Israel, who were ranked much above us. We didn't get any points for that tournament. We earned points last year at the European Championship at the adult level and the under-23s. Our under-12s, who qualified for the European Championship, put in a fantastic performance, skippered by Eric Anderson. They didn't get any rankings points. It's all about European Championships, and it's about world events. And it's just that lots of other continents get to play a little bit more. And if for example, you're Hong Kong maybe, or Pakistan, you're going to play a country like Japan, who's way up at the top, and you're going to get more points if you play a team like Japan or play a team like the USA. So it's not a fair system, but I'm not sure there is a fair system. So I think it is what it is. Anyone around us, anyone that's above us, kudos to them for taking advantage of opportunities. Hopefully we'll get somewhere we can jump. My expectation, quite frankly, is that we sit this year. I guess coronavirus puts everything out of the window with what to expect. But if we were to imagine a world where we were playing in all of the tournaments we were supposed to play in this year, which is the World Baseball Classic qualifier, we wouldn't get any points. If we were to play at the under-12 Euros, we'd get some points, but very few because it's the youngest age group. The under-15 qualifier, no points. So this year we might even go backwards. However, if we were to qualify for the World Baseball Classic and play in that in 2021, we'd then rack up massive points, and we'd see the sort of jump that the likes of Brazil made when they qualified for the World Baseball Classic that Israel made. So hopefully we get those opportunities. Ultimately, it's a nice measure of things. I'm so fired up for the players and coaches who did a great job last season that we made the jump. But it shouldn't be a be-all and end-all measure of the impact of our program.
Right. Yeah, of course, I was just going to say, like, what sort of separates us from like France at 25th, in Italy at 17, where it's sort of like countries where you see football being the dominant sport win these, and then like it feels like rugby and other team sports are a bit lower. I was just wondering if it was, like I said, it's more like opportunity to play than anything else. Cool.
Yeah.
You mentioned then about with the kids. Have you been able to see the participation levels increase because of the MLB London series is coming over?
Ooh, I think that's the $1 million question. I think it's probably too early to tell. I think just anecdotally and paying attention to some of the content that clubs around the country put out, there seems to be an uptick. I think it's going to be too early to tell, and my hope is that the ongoing efforts of clubs and what seem to be expedited, increased efforts of Major League Baseball will really allow us to leverage the opportunity of London Series. I think, I hope the schools program that they launched with USA Baseball last year will reach new heights and reach new parts of the country. But I think it might be a bit too early to tell. We certainly something we have to leverage. I don't know if we'll get another opportunity like it.
Yeah, good point. I think that's pretty much all I've got down for myself. I'm just going to move over to the listener questions. The first one comes from our very own Vince Garcia. He would like to know, I hope this is a clean one because it's a family show, what's the funniest thing you recall from your time with the Crewkern Cutters? Did I say that right? Crewkern Cutters?
The Crewkern Cutters. That's, yes, indeed. Thanks, Vince. So the Crewkern Cutters was the club that my dad founded in Somerset and played in the old version of the Southwest Baseball League. Funniest thing. Well, I guess the real fun I probably missed because I was 14 or so playing in men's league, and I'm sure they had a lot more fun when I was in bed. I do remember someone running the wrong way. I do remember someone running to third base. Which apparently is not the way you run to first base first, but he was running backwards, which actually is a really fun way to play the game if you're looking to break up the practice and give it a different twist.
Ben Regal would like to know, what advice can you give to a UK fan who wants to learn the sport of baseball but is struggling due to time differences?
Ben, thanks for listening. Ben, if you're not familiar, is the producer for Caps Off. the show that was on BT Sport, and I guess Ben's looking for a plug. The answer, Ben, is to watch Caps Off.
Shame on you, Ben. Shame. Taking advantage of my lack of knowledge.
Well, I guess now is as good a time as any to leverage the content that's available on the internet, and the time difference doesn't matter with MLB opening up so many games on YouTube. As things return to normal, or the new normal, I think it's all about finding your local club. Even if you're an MLB fan, I think there's a big difference between watching on the small screen and actually being immersed in it. And I know if you'll go to your local club, whether it's in Brighton or Aberdeen, someone there will want to spend time with you, talking about the game and answer any questions you have. And I think that knowledge and being up close and personal can only enhance the experience of watching MLB. And I mean, perhaps if you do go to your local, you'll find out that you want to be more involved than solely as a fan. So it would be great to have more of the MLB fan community, and they do a fantastic job here. Show up with their local club, have a chat, learn about them, and maybe they end up wanting to get involved, whether it's as a player, a coach, watching the games, running the PA, running social media. I think that would be fantastic.
I think everybody that's involved in British baseball who's playing or volunteering or whatever level is devastated that what's happened around the world at the moment has slowed it or put it to a halt. And I know that I'm not going to make the main team. I might not even make the B team. I'm nearly 40, but the fact that they spend time with me, like I said before about Roger, breaking down stuff and trying to improve me as a player, because everybody just wants everyone to enjoy playing and increase participation. And yeah, it really is a great sport to get into, regardless of what age you're at. It's so inclusive as well. It's one of them sports I can't remember saying it to. I'm just gutted that I found it at this stage in my life rather than like 10, 15 years early. But who knows, if I discovered it 15 years ago, 10 years ago, I may have fallen out of it and never sort of be enjoying it as I am now.
Yep, I'm gonna have to come up and watch you play. I can't wait.
Oh no! Trust me, that there's no highlights, there's no lowlights. It's we'll just go to Carvey and see if we can get some people for the Toby Carvey Sluggers. Friend of the show, Lucy Chapman from the Kent Mariners. She would like to hear a lovely, heartwarming, and inspirational baseball story.
Oh, great question, Lucy. I think she is one herself, as are the growing number of women playing baseball in this country, and the likes of Doris, who's doing a fantastic job with Women's Baseball UK. I know I'm all about something she and I have spoken about, adding a women's national team program. I don't know what the timeline on that would be, but I'd certainly be supportive of it. And it's just been incredible to see the growth there, and truly hope that once this is all said and done, I'll have the chance to meet more of the women that are playing baseball, and look forward to helping out in any way I can. What else? Lucy, I might need you to tell me one. You know what? I mentioned Richard Klein earlier. I think he is a phenomenal story growing up in Cartmel, and then there was a spot or a chance for one British player to go to the academy in Regensburg, Germany, and it was him, and got to play with, I mentioned, the likes of Max Kepler in that academy, and become the starting second baseman for the British national team, and playing multiple Euros and World Baseball Classics, and make a life for himself, learn a second language, meet a German wife, have a son who he better play for us, not Germany. But Richard Klein is a fantastic story. There's so many. I mean, and I guess the most exciting story is the one that is going to start happening again, as we do see an uptick in youth participation on the back of London series with MLB's investment. John Craman is the head coach of our under-15 national team, and then started playing baseball at Finsbury Park, which is literally across the street from his first home, and that was through MLB programming, and MLB programming included envoy coaches that came from the States and invested in him and the club and baseball in London. And I remember coaching him for the first time in 2005. I think I was a summer coach with the London Mets, and the MLB youth program transitioned into an under 16 or under 13 and under 16. We weren't Little League back then in British baseball. It was all about pony. So I think it was Bronco and ponies, and Jonathan played for the Mets at those age groups, won national championships. Then the London Mets added a adult program, which was the sensible thing to do when you've had a youth program grow. And played for the Mets, managed the Mets to a national championship, played in multiple national championships as a player, and played at the national teams level at the U12, 15, 18, 23, and senior levels, including at a European Championship in 2014. And now as the head coach of one of our national teams. It's how you script it in terms of a player going from grassroots programming through to a international career, through to an international coaching career. It's how you script it. And I'm so excited because there are people like Lucy out there that we're going to see more of those stories happen in the future.
Yeah, hopefully. And she's young, and so she's got all the time in the world to develop. And who knows, from the stuff that she's posting online on her Instagram, she looks like she's working hard. The Newcastle Nighthawks have tweeted me with a question. It's like they would like to know if a club feels that one of its youth development players that aren't based around the London areas, if they think they're a decent prospect, how can they go about getting their player in for a tryout at national levels?
Great question, and it's one of the casualties of our current situation is that the tryouts at the under 12, 15, and 18 age groups that were due to be earlier in March had to be cancelled. So the easiest answer is to attend tryouts when they are scheduled. Now I'm gonna empathize with someone in Newcastle when a tryout is at Farnham Park. It's a long way to go. The short-term situation is going to be, well, that's where it is. It's where the best facility, hands down, is. And if you aspire to play at the national team level, you have to be willing to pay the price. And I would argue that traveling the length and breadth of the country is worth it for national teams. And there's a long history of it. And we've had players come from even farther north, not just for tryouts, but for practices. Currently, a player up in Scotland comes down to HPA tryouts. So that's the short-term answer. What I would love to see happen, and I think what's on us to do now is, because we've submitted proposals along these lines, is to have we've got the time now, is to take a closer look at our proposals for how we can improve the national teams program, and figure out what boxes we need to tick for our plans to be launched. And I view how the national team operates, or the evolution of how the national team program operates, to be like cell division. At present, we have a single location tryout. I would like that to become two, and we're not reinventing the wheel. This has happened in this country in the past. Like so many other things in British baseball, it's very cyclical. We just like to do it better than how it was done in the past, because obviously if it was that good then, we wouldn't be reinventing things now. But I would love to see regional tryouts. I would love to see someone in Newcastle be able to have minimal travel. Maybe it's down to Hull because there's a little bit more baseball. Maybe it's across to Manchester because there's a little bit more baseball and a bigger population. But certainly a closer tryout. And then all we do is take the players that we liked most from those regional tryouts and bring them together to cross-check them at a single national tryout. And then just as we'd like to see that kind of concept at the tryout level, we'd like to see that with our winter program. We currently are looking at relaunching our national team development program. Because the playing population is pretty small, the likelihood is we'd have a single location. The Midlands makes sense. But as we grow participation and we see more players in more areas, I'd love to see a national team development program in 4 or 5 locations around the country. I'd love to see all of those locations have enough national team caliber players at every age group that we could have all of these regional national team centers come together to play in tournaments to help us select teams. But we're some time away from that happening. We just need to improve things in the short term, make sure that we do give people opportunities. To turn a long story very short, I would say the other 2 things that you can look at are simply telling us, and we'll make sure my contact details are available. If you have a player you think is a prospect, just tell us and we'll figure out a way to see him, whether it's someone who, like Jonathan Rodriguez, who's recently started coaching with us, living in Burnley, super talented coach who coached at the college level in California. He's in Burnley. He can come see you, and anything J-Rod would say we'd trust 100%. And then there's also other programs that operate in the winter, like BSUK's Academy. Go to Academy. There's going to be someone like J-Rod there, and even though it's not an official GB tryout, you're going to have GB coaches' eyes on you.
Yeah, I think he was actually in Manchester in December.
Yes.
Short guy, black hair.
Well, I mean, for me to call anybody short would be unfair, but yeah, he's got black hair.
Yeah, sorry, I'm 6'2", so everyone's a bit. I'm not heightist, by the way. I'll puddle anyone. Yeah, he was a really nice guy, and I actually began to wonder why I'd not seen him before. I was like, oh, maybe I put him off by just talking to him too much because, you know. And that actually leads into a question as well. Andy Brown, the artist who does the paintball, that'd be interesting way, Andy.
That would be
paints, wow. who paints the baseball stadiums and players and other things. He's asked a question of what does UK need to further grow baseball over here?
Ooh, good question. Make baseball more like paintball. You know what? I think it's not necessarily an identical strategy everywhere, but a more singular vision and a more singular mission for everyone around the country to follow. It needs to be sold well to create buy-in. We need to find our way, and some people have suggested, we kind of alluded to this earlier, should we just do what the Czechs do or the Germans do or the Italians do? No, we should copy and steal everything, which is what the best coaches do, and they make it their own. I think there are bits of every model, and I think it seems right now like the way British baseball is, or British baseball is going, it's gonna be a hybrid of potentially USA baseball, which I'll come back to, and somewhere like Australia or Germany, where you have regional associations, regional leagues. There's definitely a true national league in those places, but most of the baseball is played regionally, and they have a certain amount of control over what they can do. But when we all show up for national championships in Rome or Sydney or wherever it might be, we're going to play by these rules. Where it might be more like USA baseball is, and I think this is a little known or less known fact, virtually every major amateur baseball organization in the USA affiliates to USA Baseball. So Little League is affiliated to USA Baseball, as is Pony, as is the NCAA, the NAIA, the NJCAA, all of the college organizations, Dixie Baseball, AAU, they're all affiliated to USA Baseball because they're the governing body. Does that make Little League a less renowned or more diluted organization or brand? Of course not. When you think of Little League, you think of Little League, not USA Baseball, but they are affiliated. And it's less than $6,000, I think, the annual income that USA Baseball gets from all of these organizations, but they're all affiliated, and there's benefits of that. I think that model might work here, as long as we're all starting to sing from the same hymn sheet, or actually I'd say the same hymn book. We might be on different pages, but we're in the same book. I think that would that's the first and most important thing to improve baseball in this country. The difference to USA Baseball being Pony and Little League never play each other, but in England we would. Even if we have our own strong brands around the country, we're going to play each other, whether it's a tournament in March or for a national championship in September.
Well, Lily, what a great way to put it. Charlie Bayvro, whose name I always get wrong, and surprisingly got it right, because I just had the paintball baseball faux pas. He would like to know, what's the most important mission for GB going forward, and how do you plan to take us there?
That's a great question. I think we need to go back to the mission that we talked about earlier: inspire, develop, perform, and figure out which elements of it we can really hammer for the community as a whole. I mentioned this before. I think as the country as a whole thrives, the national team's program will thrive. And so, if I mentioned earlier, inspire, develop, perform has a little bit more to it. And if you actually take a look at our vision, and this has been published numerous times, but we can publish it again. The inspire and develop aspects of the mission are by far the most important. And our vision is inspired, and there are three things. Our program is visible and accessible. We need to do better. Every British child who plays baseball dreams of playing for their country. Our community passionately supports Great Britain baseball. So I think if we can go back to making our program visible and accessible, then we can do better at developing. And these three things I think touch on, or maybe encapsulate, what we've already talked about. Our vision is that we are developing, not developed, because if we think that we've already developed, then we're probably going to be dead in the water. You've always got to have a growth mindset. But developing for us means that the GB way is ingrained within the British baseball community. I think we're doing okay there, but there's more we can do. And I think if all of the major players get behind this mission, it will be easier for us to ingrain our way within the community. Not that everyone's got to do it the same way, but we want people to know how we operate at the national teams level. Our player identification, development, and selection programs operate nationwide. We touched on that with your question from Newcastle. We want to get out there. We've just got to figure out how to do it. And then this might be the single biggest thing. We are collaborative leaders in all development areas. I think, so to answer Charlie's question, and he's doing a tremendous job himself, if we can be more collaborative in more development areas, whether it's coach education, player development, scouting, whatever it might be, we have a wonderful staff that are very talented, and if we can get these people in front of more people around the country to help them find their own way, I think we'll all be winning.
Yeah, I do as well. And the last one from this household is the lovely Jocelyn would like to know, if you had one wish for baseball in the UK, what would it be?
That's a tremendous question. Oof. You know what? I feel like my life has or my mission has become very synergistic with the British baseball mission. So I'm just thinking along the lines of inspire, develop, perform, and the answer I'll give is, it might sound like it's a little bit short-sighted, but I think if this happens, it will mean that so much more has happened as well. And part of the mission is that, or part of the vision for us is that one or more British born and bred players are signed to a professional contract with major league organizations. And I think if that's happened, it can only mean that there are many, many amazing accomplishments happening on an annual basis across the country.
Thank you very much for that. And I like to leave the final word to the guest. So is there anything else you would like to talk about before we go?
You know what? I just firstly, it's a massive thank you to you for giving me the opportunity to talk with you. The other thing I would say is, whatever you think I can do and the national teams program can do to help you, especially during this time, please let us know. Everyone that is involved in national teams baseball is a volunteer, just like they are in Manchester or Bristol. But we're all keen to do what we can, whether it's via Twitter or LinkedIn or joining. We actually have a Facebook group that is for coaches in this country. There's, I think, over 200 sets of eyes on that Facebook group now, where we post information from the national teams program or general coaching baseball, softball information. We're looking to ramp things up. So if you're looking, even if perhaps you're not a coach, but you want to have a place to go to talk baseball and escape, we'll welcome you with open arms, and please just consider us a resource so that we can all spend more time doing rather than waiting.
Lovely. Thank you very much. And just a reminder, good folks, where we can find you on Twitter and LinkedIn.
I am at Liam Carroll GB on Twitter. I think that's right. I always forget whether there's an underscore or not. Yeah, Liam Carroll GB. So. The GB baseball Twitter is at GB_baseball. LinkedIn, I have no idea, Matt. Search my name.
I think it's just you looking very, very proud on a podium, sort of like
yeah, fake press conference, mate. That's what it was.
Brilliant. And that's us for today. Liam, thank you ever so much again. The pleasure's been all mine. I could literally listen to you talk about baseball for days, but it's approaching 9:45, and I don't want to keep you any longer. So there you go, ladies and gentlemen. Future Master Chef competitor, Liam Carroll.
Thank you so much, mate. Thanks for everything you do.
And there goes baseball's ace rimmer, Liam Carroll. What a guy. I hope you were as entertained as I was. It was an absolute pleasure chatting with him, and I hope you all really enjoyed it. Don't forget to tweet Liam with your cooking show suggestions. I think you should do ballpark meals at home with like a healthy twist in it, or I just don't know what to call it. Before I sign off, big thanks to the gang at Richmond Baseball Club for setting up the British E-Baseball League, which is currently being played out in MLB The Show by the UK Baseball Club representatives. So those games are being broadcast on sites such as Twitch. Check out your local clubs to find out who's playing. Also, why everyone is fearing Mitch from Liverpool and the Sandwich Army. Until next time, take care, be safe, and keep your distance. Ta-ra.